Okay, so here we're going to do our own implementation of filter in JavaScript. Now, let's just review what filter does. Let me change the color here. So filter, we go through an array of whatever items, and we can call the filter method. And we can pass this a function that we define. And filter is going to call the function on each of these things. Just going to go through each of our things in the array and call the function. But what this function needs to do, this function needs to return true or false. And so let's look at this, because if this function, let's say we called on 1 and it returns true, what we're going to do is, like in the map function, we create this new array at the start. If it returns true, then we say, hey, throw this value into the new array. If the function returns false, then we don't, then we just continue on. So this is a way we can add certain things. We can filter out things in our original array and then, create a filtered array. Like maybe for some reason 1 and 3 went through. And then filter would finally return this array. So let's look at that in code and implement this in code. So let's just start with some numbers. So nums equals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Doesn't really matter. We could do like names. It can be any kind of data. Maybe this is going to be like an object. Let's do name is like John, and then they have an age of like 35. And do a couple of these. These will just be our test subjects. And Jill is 17. And let's do Sally. Sally can be 27. Okay. So let's now define our function. So I'm just going to call this myFilter. This is going to take an array, and this can be any type of data, so I'll just name that array. And then also a function. And this really can be a function, any function that takes one parameter and returns true or false. So let's then start this. Like I said, like when we're iterating over these arrays, I think it's just good to practice our for loops and just get this working. So let's just iterate over this array that's being passed with the for loop. So let's come in here, create this starting variable that's going to start at 0 because that's going to be our starting index. And then we can check, as long as we're less than the array.length, we can keep calling this function, but every time we do, we want to increment the I by 1. Then we can console.log. Array, grab that index, grab that item at that specific index. So now we can test this out. MyFilter, and let's just pass it nums. We got 1, 3, 4, 5, and that matches our array. So that's looking good. Okay, but likewise, we do not want to console.log this. What we want to do is, before we start this loop, we want to create our new array. Let's call this new array, because this is what we're going to return. And maybe a bit better name for this would be like filtered array, but not a huge deal, but that's probably a more clear name. But that's what we're going to be returning at the end of this function. And what we're going to do is, as we iterate through each of the things in the array, we're going to call the function that was passed to us And this function that they give us, this needs to return a Boolean. So this should either evaluate to true or false, or a truthy value or a falsy value. Now, if they give us a function that doesn't do that, then they're misusing the way we've defined how to use filters. So that's on them. So this is going to be a true or false. This value right here, in my mind, needs to be true or false. So I could do a if statement right here. If this is true, let's go ahead and grab our filtered array, and we can push that item. And if it's not, then we'll just skip over it. So if the function they give us and we throw it the value returns true, then we push it onto the array. We go through all of our elements, and then we return the filtered array. So let's go ahead and just within here, let's define a anonymous function. So this function is going to take a number, and let's just say, hey, is the number mod 2? Let's return if the number mod 2 equals 0. So this function just takes a number, and then it returns true if it's divisible by 2. So this is really, should return evens. So let's see if that works. So I think that got a little dark there. So let's do a console.log evens. And 4 is the only even number in here. I could change that to be odd, and that grabs all my odds. Cool. Likewise, I could go through, maybe I want to see who's over 18 in this names array. It's probably not the best name. Maybe that should be called like people. Just to be more clear. So I can go through each of my people, then pass this another anonymous function that takes a person. Really what it's taking is it's taking an object that has name and age. And really all I care about is the age. So I can destructure the age in this function, because this function, people should have an age. So I can pass it, and people are an object, so I can pass this function that destructures the age, and then I can say like age dot, I can just do this, age is greater than 18. Then I can console.log, and this should be greater or equal to, since this will be 18 and over. So I can do over 18, then I can log this one. So John and Sally are in this over 18 because they're over the age of 18, and Jill has been filtered out. And just what I'm doing here, just to review, I'm just destructuring. I'm using ES6 destructuring. So if I have a variable, let's just call this let x, I can destructure name. I can destructure these keys as variables, let name and age. I can pull these off of x. I don't need the comma right there. And console.log name and age. I don't know why it's yelling at me for that. Jill and 17. So I can pull those values, and likewise I could, do this within the function params. Now I'm not using name in this one, so I don't need it. So that's why I just did age. So that's what's going on there with that little nifty syntax. Keeps our code nice and clean. So that's how we do filter. So go through this, get this in your head, and I think filter, we don't need to write this on our own because JavaScript gives us a filter function. So we can just directly pass this function inside of here. But cool. So that is the filter function. I hope you got something out of that. And yeah, that'll be that for now.